Today I want to share 5 Lightroom techniques that has been a huge help for me while editing my portrait images in Lightroom. And this video was inspired by the amount of positive feedback from my images and my work being described as very clean with beautiful colors and tone, with a film look and not being over edited, which I really appreciate. So I wanted to make a quick video to show you 5 main techniques that I use to achieve this look. So I'm just going to jump right into Lightroom and show you that now. Alright guys, I just started a completely new catalog and I've imported all of these images that I recently shot on the X-T5 in my previous video. But these are all of the raw images, and the first tip that I want to share with you guys is to make sure that your exposure and your white balance is good. Now I have set up the FujiFilm X-T5 to shoot a little bit warmer, so I get a better auto white balance straight out of camera, and this white balance actually looks fantastic. But if we go down images, you'll notice that this one's shot at a little bit warmer, so it does change the skin tone slightly, and you do get quite an inconsistent look if you don't sync your white balance. And what I do is I just go through the auto white balance and I kind of pick a white balance that I'm happy with, and I think around 5800 is looking pretty good with a tint about 7, and that's just my personal preference, and I think that just makes the skin tone more accurate. And then all I do is I just go through all of the images that were shot in the same scene with similar lighting conditions, and then up here on the sync, I just sync them. I go check none, and then I only sync the white balance. And now all of these images within the scene are going to have a very consistent look, purely because the white balance is synced. So the skin tone is going to be accurate every single time. After I've gone through and corrected and synced all my white balance in the different scenes, I literally just go into one of my presets and I just pick which one looks the best. And basically once I've found a preset, I just hit Command All, I select all of the images, go down to sync, I click all, and then I just go through and unselect a few. So white balance, exposure. I turn the lens correction off because I shoot on different lenses a lot of the time. I turn the transform off, as well as the crop. And this is just gonna sync my preset across all the images and not affect my white balance and my exposure. So it's definitely an important step to sync your white balance before you apply your favorite preset from your favorite creator, because your white balance does change a lot throughout the day, and you can see we're even up to 6650 Kelvin, which is a bit different from 5800 that we had before, which was earlier in the day. Alright, so the second technique is something that I learned from a good friend Mitch, who is also here on YouTube, and he did an entire video on this topic, which is linked below. And once I learned this really elevated my portraits to get this beautiful soft tone within my images, and also it kind of increases your dynamic range of the raw file, and it gives you that beautiful roll off in the highlights and shadows that we all love from film. And this is by softening the overall image with the whites and blacks within the tone panel, and then adding that contrast back in with the tone curve. So we're going to jump back into Lightroom and I'm going to show you how this works. Alright, so we're back in Lightroom and we've got this beautiful portrait of Lani, and this is the raw image, so you can see that we have not edited the image. And I really want to show you how this softening effect works. So if you think of this top panel as your first layer, so here you want to do all of your exposure adjustments before the tone curve. You'll also see that as we move these sliders within the tone panel, that you're actually moving this histogram up the top and also the histogram within the tone curve. So each adjustment that we make, we're moving both histograms. While when moving the tone curve, you'll notice that when we release it, we're only moving this top histogram, while the bottom histogram within the tone curve doesn't actually move. So you get a lot more tonal and exposure control within the tone panel. And that's why I was saying that you should do your exposure adjustments, and then you want to use this tone curve for your contrast. So how we get this softening effect that really does remove all of these blemishes and just give you this really nice film look is basically you just drop your whites to about -70, and then you lift your blacks to about +70 or so. And you can automatically see that we're making this image really flat, but we have smoothed out all of the skin and just making this kind of softer, dreamy effect while also retaining all the detail and the sharpness within the facial features. And then all you do is you just come down to your tone curve and you just add the contrast back in with a simple S-curve. And if you look at the before and after, you're getting a much punchier image, like you're getting a lot of contrast, but you're also getting quite a soft and dreamy look to the skin. So that's just one technique of achieving this soft film look. And if you really do like the look of this and effect you get from this, check out my presets, because a lot of my presets do have a more refined version of this and definitely in a more advanced tone curve here. Alright, I'm just going to unselect my preset there and go back to our original image. And my next tip for editing portraits is to do with the HSL and more specifically the color of the skin. And you can see that our skin tone here is looking pretty decent, but I would say it's more on the red side. So to directly just affect the skin and to perfect your skin tones, the best thing to do is to use this little picker underneath the hue tab. So we got saturation, luminance, and then we are under the hue tab. And just clicking this little picker and selecting the skin, all you have to do is just click down and either drag down, which will make the skin a lot more redder. And then if you drag up, you will make the skin a lot more warmer and more pinkish. Sorry, less pinkish. So I think around here we're getting a much better hue to the skin. We are getting a little bit of pinkness here that I'll show you how to remove, and it's kind of a makeup stylistic choice, but I'll show you a way to blend that in a little bit better shortly. And if we look at the before, we've done the hue adjustments, we're getting a little bit too much redness in the skin, and then after we're getting a much cleaner look. And if you find that the skin is a little bit too saturated, you just go underneath the saturation tab and you can pull down the skin and make it less saturated, or just pull it up and make it more saturated. And just balance your saturation and how you like it. I'm going to keep the saturation pretty neutral on this one. If we go into the luminance tab, and again we select on these little dots down here, bringing the skin down is going to make the skin look more tanned, while if we lift the luminance, you're going to get a more whiter look to the skin. And using the hue, saturation, and luminance sliders with this little picker is a great way to perfect skin tones. And I'm just going to jump back into this hue slider, and I'm just going to reset all of these sliders here and just get that bit of red pinkish skin. If you do like all of the colors but you are struggling to get this little bit of red pinkish skin in the face, the best thing to do is head down to the color grading tab, go into the middle dot for the midtones. So if we zoom into the image and we want to get a little bit of this little pinkish skin tone out of the face, with the midtone selected, just choose around about a green color and then just lift the saturation a little bit. And you'll notice that this instantly just removes all of that pinkish undercoat shine that she has, but doesn't really screw up her makeup where she's got this nice pink brush that she's used. And if we look at the before and after, that's before and that's after. You can automatically see that just adding a little bit of green into the midtones really fixes that pinkish look. And a lot of makeup artists do this, you know, if they have a model with a little bit of flushing or red skin, they'll generally use a foundation that has a slightly green cast to it, and it makes the skin look less red. Alright guys, I've actually just reapplied my preset here to show my fourth Lightroom editing technique, which is just retouching skin within Lightroom. So if we just zoom into the skin here, we'll see that we do actually have quite a soft looking portrait. Here is the before, you know, we're getting quite a bit of texture here, and here is the after. And that's purely by using the technique of dropping the whites, lifting the blacks, and then adding more contrast in with the tone curve. You get this really nice soft look within the skin and the whole image, while you're retaining a lot of detail still in the eyes, the lips, and of course the eyebrows. But to retouch portraits within Lightroom, if you go up here on the top right and you click on masks, and then you go down here and you select the person, this will give you a bunch of different masks you can choose from. So we're just gonna click on the facial skin and also the body skin. And that's just gonna create a mask around all of the showing skin and just mask out the eyes, the eyebrows, and the lips, and of course her clothing in here. So we create mask, and then we scroll down to the clarity and texture. And then I go about -20 with the texture and about -15 with the clarity. And if we turn this mask on and off, you can see that we're just getting a little bit of a retouch to the skin, and it's still looking very natural with the skin, but a little bit more blending in with the different blemishes and also the grain that I've added on this image with my preset. Now guys, if you don't want to do this every time, I'm just going to delete this mask, and if you scroll down right to the bottom of all your presets that Lightroom give you, and you come down to this Adapt Portrait, the best one is called Enhance Portrait, and if you just hover over that, click it, you'll see that it has applied all of these different masks. So it's softened the skin, it's made the iris and the pupil a bit brighter, sharpened them out, and then you'll see that it's also saturated the lips and a few other things. And if you see that there's a little warning sign there with teeth, it means that it wants to widen the teeth, but it can't detect them. So it doesn't actually affect the image. So if you turn this on and off, you can see that you do get a retouched portrait. And this isn't a professional retouching, but it just gives you that smooth look, and it's a really fast way to retouch portraits. And if you think it's too much or too little, again, in this top left, you do have an enhance slider, so you can slide the amount and decrease the amount. And then guys, if you have bought my presets, I do have my own version of this mask. So this will just mask out all of the face, and it just adds a little bit of saturation to the lips. Just a bit more subtle than the Lightroom one. I feel like the Lightroom one is a little bit too much, and this is just a toned down version that you can increase, and you can also decrease with the amount slider. Alright guys, my fifth and final tip for editing portraits is actually cropping. Cropping has to be one of the most underrated ways of making a portrait image stand out and just look balanced on the overall frame. And you can see this image here, I feel like this image has been taken very well, but if you actually go into the crop tool by pressing R, you'll see how much I've actually cropped away. And if we go back to how this was shot, you can see that this image is actually quite distracting, as we just have too much headroom up here. And I've also shot the image where I'm pretty much cutting her knees off in these jeans, and just makes her legs like kind of dominate the image too much. So if we go back to my original crop, I have cropped above the knees, so I've given a bit of space between her waistline and the top of her knees, and you can see that her top head isn't actually filling the frame, and I've got a nice little bit of headroom here. Here's another example of cropping, and this is a much closer portrait, and the whole goal here is to never look like you're actually cutting a limb off. And you can see that the way that I have composed this image, I kind of got a little bit wrong. I don't have enough headroom, as we're kind of chopping off her hair almost here, and you can see that her arm here is kind of getting dissected by the end of the frame, and it's quite distracting in my opinion. Alright guys, before we end this video, I just want to give you a bonus tip to do before you even import your images into Lightroom, and that's the art of culling and curating your images. And I use a completely free culling software called Narrative Select, and I love Narrative Select as it's a very clean and minimal layout and very easy to learn and use, especially compared to other culling softwares out there that seem too futuristic for my taste. You also get this panel on the right showing you critical focus, letting you select the sharpest and in focus image. And after I've made all my selects, I just ship them directly into my Lightroom catalog. And just to reiterate, this is not a free trial. It's a completely free software to use. And all you have to do is click the link in the description down below, enter your email, and download Narrative Select to use completely for free. And if you want to fast track this editing process, check out my presets, which are linked down below. And they not only work for portraits, but also street, lifestyle, and landscape photography. If you sign up to my photography breakdown newsletter, you'll get 25% off your first purchase. I'm doing a quick photography trip down in Newcastle, Australia, that I'm making a video about. So if you want more content like this, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next week.